should elaborate on that ending line from last time. It's not that I don't want to save Earth, it's that there is nothing important about Earth to anyone.
As what connection does Shepard even have to Earth? In my take, he's a fucking colonist, was trained in other worlds and spent most of his service time on ships, like he would have if he was a spacer. And as an Earth native, they were a street rat that hated the place. Within the confines of the game, Earth is not only nothing special, it is entirely unimportant to our main character and most of the cast. Humanity is the newest race of the galactic powers, so they have the fewest colonies. Yes, but that doesn't make them second-class citizens, and losing Earth will not mean the end of the race, so there's no narrative connection to why this place is special, aside from our own brought-in experiences of this being the only place we as a player outside of the game are allowed to keep our stuff.
And that isn't even getting to how beyond basic and badly told the Reaper's actual invasion is. They just go somewhere and destroy it, without real reason behind it. Almost completely abandoning the synthetic elder gods harvesting for their own procreation idea the earlier game set up, or subjugation of any species that advances too far, which would challenge their supremacy. But by revealing how they actually go about this, it's fucking stupid, and contradicts what was set up. And you know why? Because they never go after the Citadel to shut down the relays.
I'm serious and baffled why Walter skipped that point, and the entire idea of the Cthulhu-esque entities, as it was a big damn element of how the Reapers reaching the relays is the end game. If they put all of these forces they are now using to attack everyone else in the fucking galaxy in one spot, they can kill anything unless there's a united force standing to oppose them. The original game has Nazaro require the Geth and Saren to claim the Citadel, because all alone he could be beaten. But the Citadel was not just a relay to dark space, it controlled every single relay in the galaxy, shutting them down and cutting off every system that used it for travel. That was the trap of the relays, as their convenience made research into other means of FTL unnecessary. Thus they would all be easy pickings when the Reapers would shut them off, as there would only be a small range of systems they'd be able to travel to before their conventional FTL would fail them. And yet, ME3 never recognizes these and other signs in the previous games that these entities, who liken us unto amoeba, are flawed. It may have taken fleets of ships to take down a single Reaper, but it was shown it could be done if they could bypass their defenses. And that was given to us in ME2 if you presume the Collector's ships, weapons, and shields were on a level comparable to even the weakest Reaper.
But no. The Reapers are mostly winning in this game due to narrative contrivance and idiocy, used to force the collected races into specified quarters and losses, despite some very significant contradictions.
This game constantly has a problem with focusing more on the drama of a moment, and completely forgetting to even bother with the details that would not only inform, but validate such moments. Which is no more evidence than the kid. That fucking kid, which we encounter as Shepard and Anderson make their way through. How the hell did this place turn into ruin this fast? Moreover, if the attack was this bad, how did anyone here survive? But yeah, the kid. He's stuck hiding in a ventilation shaft from the attack around him, and he refuses to let us help him escape. He's trapped in there, with no way out, and yet Shepard both sees him when he shouldn't have, and then he vanishes without a sound. Like he's a ghost, or a hallucination, or something.
Seriously, he sees him out of literal nowhere when he wasn't there when we first passed by it. There is no prompt to us realizing he's there, and only appeared after Anderson disappears. He only ever appears to Shepard, no one else.
And he keeps saying we can't help him. That despite reaching out to him, that he just says that everyone's going to die, and we shouldn't even try, implying we should just all lay down and die, and just disappears the second Anderson comes back.
This kid was the focus of the indoctrination theory explanation that comes from fans of Mass Effect, and seen as a superior story thread to explain a lot of nonsense that comes from this game. That due to the events of Arrival and Shepard's proximity to a Reaper indoctrination artifact for literal days, on top of his other exposure to Reaper artifacts and technology over time, that Shepard by this point may be in the beginning stages of Reaper indoctrination. And such was a pretty widely embraced theory, because it explained a ridiculous amount of inconsistencies, and also aligns with the conduct we see of Cerberus later in the game, when their organization is shown to have become indoctrinated from the ground up, even though all of that contradicts what was shown with Saren and the Arrival crew.
Unfortunately, this was entirely discredited by the production staff as not what happened, which just goes to show just another fuck you to the fans and how they tried to give them the benefit of the doubt with their invoked symbolism.
But no! This fucking Brat is just supposed to be representative of everyone Shepard cannot save, or has failed to save, by them intentionally killing the kid off just as Shepard escapes the planet. And be the cause of a psychological breakdown of our Shepard as a consequence of this. This does not work for several reasons. The first of which being that this echoes my words about Zoo Ranger last month. We are given no reason to give a damn about the Brat.
It made no fucking sense for him to be fixated on that kid over literally anyone else he's close to, he's lost, or, say, the colony he was responsible for murdering. Both of which are kind of bigger flags than an idiot kid that refused to let himself be taken to fucking safety because he was a fucking imbecile.
For some unexplained reason, screenwriters assume kids equals innocence. Aside from certain writers who more readily assume kids equals assholes, but assume this means automatic empathy towards them for what they go through, when it doesn't. At all. You still have to work to justify it or give us some form of connection for us to care about them.
And it's not given from Shepard's nightmares about the kid, because it is not about the kid. It is about Shepard being traumatized by that loss. But it never once connects as that, as the Brat is nothing more than a cipher to facilitate a supposed psychological breakdown of the character that never happens. The Brat has no details to him, not even a name. So it never feels like it's at all a legitimate thing for a rendition of the character to be going through. Just something that is forced upon them, and breaks any attempt at role-playing with them as we've done before, as the trauma of that loss is never shown as an impetus or informs any action Shepard takes at any point in the game's story.
And I can point to a multitude of things I have reviewed that actually succeed in this, building actual, tangible empathy with such a scenario, and not a lot of time given to them. .hack GU completely runs off of this. As do the Disgaea games I've reviewed thus far.
I'm gonna say it again. You are not alone.
Dust and Elysian Tale pulled such off beautifully.
We did everything right, Dust. Everything we were supposed to do.
And sometimes that's not enough, Fidget.
It's been present in multiple Kamen Rider shows. And so many of them are in things that are written off and derided as only for children, when this is an entry failed at in something rated M for mature. I mean, it's such an easy thing to do, that the other games did with just the simple dialogue wheels.
She pretends to be dead. If she's dead, she can't work. But they know.
She hopes to leave, but they put her in the pen. She didn't fight. She was already broken when they put the wires in.
I wake up every night, sick and sweating. Each of their faces staring at me, accusing me. I'm already a dead man. I don't sleep. Food has no taste. Some days, I just want it to be over.
Hell, the only thing I can think of I've reviewed where they've done it worse is the Lightning Saga and anything involving toy producer Shinichiro Shirakura.
But this doesn't work for Shepard, as this kid is not special to him, nor does he empathetically connect to this brat in any way. It is detached, distant, and impartial. And for him to be affected by a random kid's death, and for it to be representative of all the others he's failed like this, makes less sense than him suffering from hallucinations due to being stuck in proximity to an indoctrination artifact for literal days. Because due to arrival, we were responsible for the execution of several 100,000 people.
It's Occam's razor, guys. The simplest explanation is presumed to be the correct one due to how much more you have to stretch for any other to work. And the dead kid plot, to many, myself included, didn't work as you had to make far more assumptions to shove your own personal Shepard into that box of that death mattering over so many others to give such an impact. And moreover, without the potential context of indoctrination theory, every single appearance of this kid is nothing but a very annoying non sequitur.
You know how they could have sold it? Have this be Jenkins, or whoever you end up leaving to die on Vermeer. Or even if they lack the save upload, people that died under his watch, that trusted him to get through all of this with them intact and alive. Like the companions and crew depending on the outcomes of last game's suicide mission, as he sent them to their deaths. And now as these horrors are encroaching upon them, they are coming to haunt him with self-doubt. That is personal. That is reflective of the character coming to question himself and his own resolve when reminded to their actual failures. When he has spent so long being the inspiration and motivator to the actions around him and been held up as a model to aspire towards. Coming to second guess oneself as the reality of the hell they've fallen into begins to sink in, that's human, and makes it all the more important for the game's carried over events to show and be reflective of the impact and good the character has done to help him back out of that spiral of self-doubt when they most need this rallying figure to stand strong despite the weights pressed upon him.
Especially if, the game was going to end with the elevation of the character to yet another tired, overused Jesus metaphor, since they didn't want to end things properly. But this? It serves no purpose in the story, other than as a potential explanation for why the fucking space baby appears as he does at the end. But as it never connects narratively, emotionally, or within the context of any potential interpretation of the character, it completely and utterly fails. Which is why so many thought it was part of indoctrination, as there, it makes sense. But here, it's nothing but assuming we have empathy for a dumbass kid whose own stupidity led to him getting killed. I do not have sympathy for those who could be nominated for a Darwin Award.
It's at this point Anderson says what our Shepard should have from the beginning. Contact the Citadel and ask them for help. This Shepard, being an indignant dumbass about being sent away from the front lines, when this is not the front lines. Earth has fallen. But not even Anderson realizes that, as he chooses to stay behind and rally the forces of the destroyed world into a resistance, which by the time this is over should all be indoctrinated from proximity, but I don't think this writer cares. We get underway, Vega and Ashley somehow having made it on board, and Hackett tells us to get our ass to Mars, because they found something in the Prothean beacon just recently with the help of Liara. The Mars mission is where you see a fair chunk of the ME2 bashing and character assassination from Ash, as we encounter Cerberus troops attacking the installation to get the data Liara has uncovered. And of course, Ash thinks you had something to do with it, even though we have been in her sights this entire time and had no way of tipping them off nor receiving any communication from them. Liara, of course, knows better, and while I'm mostly indifferent to the character because of my dislike of her voice actor, once again thanks for ruining that Fabula Nova Crystallis, it is good to see her and to have her not acting like an imbecile like everyone else.
Unfortunately, the Cerberus infiltration is entirely unnecessary and thus stupid. Why? Because they already had an infiltrator on the inside that could disseminate information to them.
Now, I admittedly expect this from Cerberus. They are one of the most asinine, clandestine, terrorist, evil organizations in fiction. At least one that is not led by the great leader of Shocker. But this is a doozy even for them. And it's mainly because of their prime infiltrator, Dr. Eva Kor. See, having an infiltrator giving them information on anything new for the Prothean archive, that's actually pretty smart and goes with their tendency to have infiltrators everywhere. It'd be an important location to get data from. But likewise, that spy makes this attack all pointless from a story perspective, and thus is only there to 1. Let Ash bash you for playing ME2. 2. Tell you that Cerberus, a terrorist organization, are the bad guys.
I know it's hard to believe, but a group of racist xenophobes focused on human supremacy at any cost, even if that cost is in human lives, they are not good people.
And 3. Show that Cerberus is indoctrinating its agents, so instead of the Reaper forces, they will in fact be the bad guys who have more agency and be actively involved in everything that goes bad than the Eldritch abominations that are actively destroying the galaxy. But the bigger problem here comes from the revelation that Dr. Eva is a gynoid.
That just raises further questions.
And too many of them to count due to that being something not doable previously in this setting. First, no one has the technology to make a fully organic form cybernetic. The closest anyone has gotten is the forms the Geth heretics took after they allied with Nazara, as no one has been allowed to do that kind of research out of paranoid fear of synthetic life forms. More organic synthetic bodies have only been seen with the husks, but that is because of the husks and all other specialized Reaper agents being cyberformed from purely organic bodies, which holds a limitation to how much that form can be altered.
2. What has been operating it is a fully sentient AI, something not even the Geth have fully managed to do, and one that is far beyond Edie, or as it is later revealed, is even possible for the Reapers to do because... 3. She has been infiltrating without anyone aware of her for months now. Thus, she has been able to perfectly mimic human conversation and organics behavior, and yet has remained perfectly enslaved as little more than a doll to Cerberus programming, when only Edie and Legion have shown themselves as really sentient and on the tier of true AI by making their own choices.
And this was just done by Cerberus? I'll remind you, Edie was yet another example of a failure from them, as they took a murderous defense AI from Luna, with core programming salvaged from Nazara, to very hostile anti-organic entities, and by mashing them together made something that likes squishy humans when it was supposed to be hostile to anything viewed as attacking her. Thus, should have murdered the team working on her if they were doing their job right, like most other Cerberus cells. So it was clearly done by the most intelligent people in Cerberus. But they are literally incapable of doing this from everything presented before. But, okay. Let's say they can do this. That makes their assault on the outpost even more asinine!
Because Ava, as a program, could access the systems and upload everything remotely. Copied the files months ago to facilitate Cerberus's plans, and then covered up their loss as they delete them here to make anyone else none the wiser. As after millennia, a loss of data should be easy to cover up.
And what would they have covered up? Deus Ex Machina. It is nothing but because it is not justified in the story.
For the Prothean Archive had plans for the device called the Crucible, a device everyone believes can defeat the Reapers. In Harper's case, he thinks he can use it to control them because he's abandoned any nuances to his character about wanting to protect humanity from them, because if they can build it, and yet we are never given the opportunity to learn why it's been overlooked for so long.
And that is because this game almost entirely lacks exposition dialogue wheels. The only ones we get are prompts for conversations entirely different than the ones we were having. In other words, no elaboration on a given point, or lead into the railroaded responses. Once again, because the writers weren't interested in explaining these story points, only magicking them into existence so as to drive their story. Because it's space magic! We don't have to explain it!
I don't expect you to understand, Shepard, and I'm certainly not looking for your approval.
The writer speaking through a character, everybody.
This thing's existence is ridiculously easy to write off as well, of the Alliance ignoring it because they couldn't make heads or tails of it, and at the time were more interested in the other Mass Effect tech like FTL, shields, and weapons to defend themselves from the clear existence of alien life forms. But after Nazara and Ilos, they looked back into and have been researching how to build ever since because it's that severe of an undertaking.
But that is not the way it is presented in the story. It's given as something that was buried in the depths of the archives as something unimportant, even though this was the weapon the Protheans, and other races, have tried to build to end the Reaper cycle permanently, only for the next generation to stumble across the plans, add to it, and then leave it for the next race in the exact same stupid way. Each of these races have known the time of their end is coming, and yet ignored supplying the means by which to end it in a way the races they know will come after them can understand. That's part of the problem with the archives, and how it's needed to be decoded by every race that's found one, which stalls their development, as they then needs to backwards engineer it all instead of coming to a point where they can understand the basics and make it their own.
And worse, that would write off the other problem of the Crucible, in that they don't know the first thing about what they are actually building, as they don't know anything about how it works, but just assume it's their win condition, and thus put all possible resources towards its construction as outlined in the plans. But by knowing how it works, we don't know what is needed to get it to work right. Thus the construction efforts to it, which we spend most of the game getting resources for, becomes an abstract goal, and not one we feel we are actually working towards or earning, as its construction would go on without us doing anything. Like, we don't even matter.
Which brings us to what wrecks this game even this far in. The irrelevance of the protagonist's role in it in actually stopping its enemies. Shepard didn't discover the ruins, didn't discover the plans, didn't even save them from being stolen by Cerberus. That was our pilot Cortez. He didn't give them tactics and strategies to successfully outfight Reaper forces, or bring them technological means with which to fight them after they are proven in battle against the Collectors to actually work against Reaper forces. He had to be ordered to go ask the Citadel for help instead of using these connections he had built in the past games, which were meant to be called upon when the Reapers came or suggested himself. Hell, he didn't even overhear about this senseless attack, but had to be ordered to go find this plot thread against all common sense.
It has stripped Shepard of the influence he had in shaping galactic events down to do nothing but a gopher with a reputation. And worse, this opening has shown that military power is worthless in comparison to the value of this Deus Ex Machina. But most of the game focuses on our acquisition of war assets, figures of military power gathered from the assorted races. Not technicians, not engineers, not scientists, but anyone with some gun and some muscle. Sure, we do collect some of the former, but they're given far less of a priority and value as a war asset than those with weapons, even though such forces are not occupied figures on the front lines of campaigns which are holding the Reapers off, and are only being gathered so as to justify a later narrative contrivance. Because, hey, there would have been something interesting from all those scientific figures being found as ones needed to help build the damn thing, due to their avenues of research being just what's needed to get the Crucible to work right. Understand how it's supposed to work. Possibly with them being stuck behind enemy lines or sieges in the campaign, with interim forces requiring our help to get to them. and the goodwill garnered from that making them want to help with the final push to the end goal.
But none of that happens here. The focus is on the war against the Reapers, and the Crucible is nothing but a background element needed to be finished before the story can enter its endgame. No matter what asset we acquire to help, it will be built and completed regardless of what we do. So, why even bother with anything beyond that? Quite simply, it's because of the other arcs the remaining writers set up in the other games, and not the ones that come from this one. I'm only 2 hours in, guys.
Which finally takes us to our next return trip to the Citadel.
Why is this place not overrun by Reapers?
Well, right now it's a routing point for refugee activity and the organization of what little anti-Reaper cooperation which exists. As BioWare has yet to understand how to not have a character slowly walk to any location over the course of a ridiculously tedious amount of time as a time sink.
Okay, BioWare? How many games have you guys made now where you have your playable character walk slower to a location than a traveler in World of fucking Warcraft?
Your Citadel visits will be long and tedious, more so than any other, despite having far fewer places to visit, and the refugee traffic for the Reapers somehow hitting everywhere at once.
The game actually says in several dialogue prompts that the sieges of other systems have been going on for months now, which of course contradicts what's been presented before, or how much time it would take them to get to another relay. But no one who was making the game actually seemed to care.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
I begin the Citadel visit by recruiting Alliance reporter Diana L. Oh my god, what is wrong with your face?
I know the character models are crap in this game, but seriously, what the hell?
Anyway, she's brought along to report on our activity as it happens. One would think that having such would be a security risk because the Reapers, much like the Geth, can listen in on all of our transmissions, especially for a stealth warship. But no, you lose war assets by not having her, as would be the more logical solution. We're sent to Huerta Hospital to look in on Ashley. She was injured in her own stupidity fighting the gynoid. But here we find two persons of interest. The first is good old Dr. Karen Chakwas, who came here after pretty much everyone was thrown off the Normandy when it was confiscated for no legal reason.
Because, of course, everyone was thrown off the Normandy when the ship was taken by the Alliance, despite it being neither an Alliance or terrorist ship, but a private ship owned by a Spectre they had no authority over. The events of Shepard's incarceration and how he got literally everyone off are never actually discussed, because they were considered unimportant to the story. You know, this was explained in ME2 even with the shoehorned in redirection of the story.
I pretty much just re-recruit her to run the med lab. But the other is Dr. Michelle, the woman who ran the free clinic in the wards during Mass Effect 1 who helped Tali, that I then in turn saved in order to recruit Garrus. She now works here, without any real explanation, when she was sent down to the wards clinic because she lost her position in a place like this.
I guess in times like these, beggars can't be choosers, though I'm amazed she even popped up in the first place to even have what little of a conversation I have with her. Which brings us back to the long list of irritants I have with this game, and addressing how the save data importer is totally broken, as it's pretty much a toss-up on whether the game even recognizes any of the milestone carryover items or events you went out of your way to complete in the prior games.
I had entirely different decision chains for the likes of Morden, Grunt, Kasumi, Tali, Legion, well, the list goes on, pop to be reflective of their dialogue as opposed to what I actually did. And a lot of the items that are supposed to be reflective of my earnings and effort in the past games likewise didn't spawn or be reflected in the upload, meaning I'd often need to reset, resave my ME2 save file, and restart from zero.
And this is only exacerbated by the fucking main storyline saying, and the writers assuming, that instead of blowing up the collector base, we just straight up handed the thing over intact to Cerberus, despite that decision in and of itself being stupid. And something I have never once done. As you do not hand terrorists or supremacists anything, as it will always result in bad things.
And worse, several characters that only show up if you interacted with them before in the prior games don't appear at all with this glitch. I may have been kind of mean to Conrad Werner in ME2, but I still chose a series of events that's supposed to have him spawn and give up war assets when used in addition to the matriarch writings I obtained in ME1 from scavenging literally every fucking planet in Mass Effect 1 that I only went back and did in the first place because I had a checklist of things to do in the prior games from when I started these videos to check off complete so when I got to ME3 I could present the entire damn experience to my viewers.
Mass Effect 3, a completionist nightmare simply because BioWare's save importer doesn't fucking work.
The worst of these, and really this is the only reason I'm bringing it up, ME2's best damn NPC period, Matriarch Aethita, aka Liara's dad Claudia Black, never appeared in any playthrough I did of ME3 no matter what I did or reset to, even when I went in and imported my FemShep. The game does not recognize that I ever interacted with her in ME2, and that interaction, alongside viewing the vid clip of her looking at a picture of Liara from the Shadow Broker DLC, is required to get her to spawn in ME3. And as I showcased in the ME2 videos, I have video evidence of me fucking doing that!
Which is irritating, as I really wanted that resolution, and to see the two interacting properly in my playthrough of the game. Not in a YouTube clip I went and mined later on. But ME3 is pretty much designed to fail in providing any form of proper resolution for the cast you were invested in and connected to with how little it lets you interact with the characters.
And yeah, as opposed to ME1 and 2's long dialogue chains where you got enjoyment just shooting the breeze with characters at locations, it just pretty much locks you to one occurrence of dialogue per location. Once you have that location, you can't really even have it again or get new info from them. They just stop talking to you. And a lot of that time, any additional information or lines they might have occur as overheard dialogue, meaning you aren't really interacting with the NPC or environment, which makes the whole thing impersonal and emotionally detached.
And if you're making a video game whose war plot is trying to prevent the worldwide apocalypse, and your impetus for your motivations requires emotional attachments, you pretty much shoot yourself in the foot entirely by relying on assumed empathy. You're supposed to make us fucking care, damn it! And there's nothing in this game that makes you care about what's going on in isolation. It's only what you've brought with you from the previous games that makes you at all invested in what's going on here.
So we finally get to the Citadel Embassy, and of course kick Kalish Algiani's ass again because she's being a detestable person.
I've had enough of your tabloid journalism.
Not this time, you
We thus go to see Udina and the Council, and none of them can help us.
And I totally side with them on this. They are not being short-sighted and dismissive of Shepard's claims and evidence. They have their own problems. Much of them have been brought about from ignoring Shepard's warnings, yes, but by me killing the original Citadel Council in Mass Effect 1, it's not because they stuck their heads up their asses and ignored any efforts to prepare for the conflict, but because they are simply overwhelmed by the sheer masses of forces they were not provided any context to being sieged by. Not like these individuals ever telegraphed that fact, referring to be asininely obstinate and uppity.
Need I remind you that the last time we fought the Reapers, Shepard sacrificed the Council to protect human interests?
Again, not why I did it. It was their arrogance that precipitated the entire story of ME1. But here, Shepard did not share any of what he learned after he was done with Cerberus to tip them off to him being right and prepare for this siege. And as for Earth, to use a clip from the game...
Counselor, the Reapers are in our space as well. Earth is no more or less important than any Council homeworld.
Again, the only defense to that I'd have was Earth has nowhere near the number of established colonies as the other Citadel races. But even a culled population can be rebuilt, and it's not the only homeworld that will fall.
Hell, Shepard's words about them being the first and heaviest hit are just completely false by the Citadel already having refugees pour in from the entire galaxy before they even arrived. But Shepard does nothing to convince them at all to help, as this agency is once more robbed with Liara's telling of the Crucible and the need to build it to stop the Reapers. But they all refuse as their military forces are needed elsewhere.
And again, you don't need military forces to build this thing. You need scientists and engineers that are obviously not a high priority right now, alongside building supplies. But this is never put in that context. They're putting all of their money on that thing to save Earth story-wise, but in narrative, Shepard's only asking for military power, which is impossible right now, and the story has already admitted is not a solution, despite it possibly having been one due to ME2. And it completely ignores the possibility of planetary triage, Earth being a lost cause, so Earth forces could help the other races, because this is an Earth first, humanity first narrative.
But it provides the first seed for the rail-locked storyline we're on for this game, as the new Turian Counselor...
His name is Quintius, the Solarian is named Shell, and the Asari Irissa. The game does not tell you these names at this time. I never see Quintius's and Irissa's names actually said in the game, because it was considered immaterial to the story.
Anyways, Quintius gives us the seed for the railroaded story of the game.
And that quest is... Save a politician!